There we go. It's all yours, Lynn.
All right, can you take that thing, that recording thing off the screen?
Just
confirm.
hit got it.
Yeah, everyone has to put got it, hit got it.
I don't have got it, I have continue,
Oh.
continue. Okay, I'm off. Okay, so I'm gonna, first of all, I want to welcome everybody. I'm very, very excited about this. I had difficulty sleeping last night because this is like a very interesting thing that we're doing. And we have great people who are going to, local writers, published writers, people who have had success are going to walk you through various aspects of writing. You're going to talk about voice. We're going to talk about character development. We're going to talk about how to find a publisher. We're going to talk about people who did different types of writing. There's a person who did photojournalism, person who's a sports writer, a person who wrote stories about animals. I wrote a book about people who came to Las Vegas who never expected to be here. We have somebody else who wrote a novel. And everybody's going to speak about different aspects of writing, and one of them I'm very excited about because it's about promotion, which which is very important. After you get there and after you go through all the work and you publish your book, then it's a question of, unless you hire a very, very expensive publicist, then you're kind of on your own to really promote it. So I've been doing that for myself, and I know how difficult it is. So I'm anxious to be a student as well as a teacher. What I'd like to do now, we have a 26-minute video to show you about, with three other ladies plus myself. We did over the summer with Neil on a YouTube at the JCC office. And the idea was, I had the idea to do a video of people who were not writers, people who had different careers, and at a late stage in life or middle stage in life decided that they had something to say, and they decided to write. And I spoke. There's a lady who's going to speak about, she wrote a children's book. Another lady used her career as a cosmetician, wrote a book about cosmetics. And somebody else is a physical fitness person. She's a teacher, she's an instructor. She wrote about physical fitness and different aspects of health. And everybody came to it because we felt we had something to say, not necessarily great talent in writing, but something to say. And that's the video that you're going to see. But what I'd like to do now, I'd like to, if each one of us to spend no more than 2 or 3 minutes doing a little highlight, just tell us a little bit about yourself and about where you are with an idea and what you hope to get out of this. And that'll be helpful to us in terms of the people who are going to present, maybe having them hone some of their comments to really help you individually. So I'll start the ball rolling. I'm a New Yorker, as you could probably hear. And we came to Las Vegas 21 years ago. And I've lived here for 21 years, and my career was in education. I was an educator for 50 years. I was a teacher. Then I was an assistant principal. I worked in the school district for 17 years and met a lot of people who had interesting stories about why they came to Las Vegas. And you'll see in the video, I'm not going to go into it now, you'll see in the video how I came to write the book. But I think that there's great value in having something to say and then being able to say it. So that's the whole purpose behind what we're trying to do. So I'm going to turn it over to my right. Joy, would you like to speak, please?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you hope to get out of this.
I am a native Philadelphian, so no New York accent to reveal. I always was employed in some area where I did the writing, I did the presentation, I did the business plan, things like that, instructions for packaging. I did that when I was in the packaging industry. Anyhow, I never wrote for myself until one day at JCC, Neil introduced a couple of women who were promoting the memoir project. And it was Chris Cutler, if any of you know her, who motivated me to start to write through that first JCC meeting. And I have continued with her group, and that memoir group that she started now has 8 people very closely connected through our writing. We all write regularly, and we meet on Zoom and have been doing that for, I think it's got to be since 2012. So that's a long time. And we are a diverse group of people. So we have entirely different backgrounds, and the material that comes out of it is absolutely fascinating. I won't go any further into what that group is, but I value them tremendously.
Great.
And I'm glad I'm in that group.
And having that kind of support for each other, with each other, is a lot of things that you bounce off, and that's exactly what we're going to try to do here. We're going to have.
Excuse me, I have to add one thing. I did complete my own memoir and self-published it. What year was that? I think 2014.
Okay.
Okay.
Good. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Sephora, would you like to speak, please? Can't hear her. Neil, tell her we can't hear her.
Who are we trying to get?
Sephora.
I don't think we can hear her today, so we might need to skip over her.
All right. Well, we're gonna have to skip. All right. So by next week we'll do that. Okay. All right. We can do. Thank you. We can do Sharon and Jade. Okay. Tell us each one of you. Tell us a little bit about yourself. I see Jade. Jade is the person I met at my book signing, and we had a nice conversation about writing, and she said she just didn't know how to get started. Had a very interesting idea, and brought her friend Sharon along. So let's hear from you ladies a little bit about what you hope to get out of it. Good morning, Judith. I see you just tuned in.
Yeah, I've been trying for a while, but I didn't have
Okay.
Hello.
Here now. All right. Jade, Sharon, Jade.
Okay, I'll start. Thank you
Go ahead.
for the introduction, Lynn, and I did read your book and I absolutely loved your book.
Thank you.
And it was just amazing. It was very well written, the
Thank you.
illustrations, the 50 states, and then the extra piece with the territories, that blew me away as well. So a very good read in case people need a nice, easy, fun book to read, Lynn's book. Okay, that said, yes, I've been thinking about writing a book for over 10 years now. I took a writing class at the community college a while ago. I've been a teacher for over 40 years. So I have the background anywhere from pre-K all the way up through 8th grade. And my premise now has changed a little bit since the last 10 years. Things are very different now than they were. And I know that also for a fact because I have gone to every library here. Well, not every, but
Oh, yeah. I got it, but I didn't have the access code on the. No, it's just me. Anyway, I'm on.
Okay. All right. Let's go back
Sorry.
to. Sorry. Go ahead.
sorry for the interruption, but anyway, to make a long story short, my book is going to be taking place in the Sierra Nevada mountain range. I'm working with a little critter, so I'm tying in with the science element of reality, but it's going to be a fictional children's book. And then I'm going to be putting in the most current elements, which would be your climate change, your global warming, your endangered species, all of that, because that's what's out there now. Because like I said, I went to many libraries and everything is very different now than it was. So I'm very excited, and I just need kind of an outline kind of a thing so I know how to go forward.
That's great. Great idea and very, very timely.
Thank you.
All right, Sharon, let's hear from you.
Yes, Jade and I actually met at our pool and through conversation discovered that both of us were interested in writing. I lived in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware for 10 years before moving to Las Vegas full-time. And I was fortunate enough to be involved with Wilmington University, who offered writing classes. And this was everything from how to write your memoir to writing short stories, which is basically what the majority of of my previous work has been short stories. I absolutely loved this class. The realm of people that I met was remarkable. There was a retired FBI agent in my class. There was a former nun who left the church. There was a refugee from Syria, you name it. And to get their perspective and how they wrote, because we shared, after we worked on a project, we shared each other's work, and it was amazing. What I have found for myself is that I seem to be overwhelmed with so many ideas. And so my thought was, if I could take this memoir and break it down into smaller segments, I wouldn't be taking on too much to overwhelm me.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Sounds great. Neil, you want to say something?
Yeah, because I know that Sephora couldn't talk, but she did write something in the chat, so I thought I could just share
Great.
it with you guys. And if you haven't seen it, Sephora works as head of web and SEO at Red Chimp Media, and Paul Pata Law. Yeah, apparently my speakers are working right now. I want to learn how to get started in writing a novel. I grew up in Las Vegas, and she left for a short time and lived in Israel for 5 years and then came back. And she's always wanted to write a novel, fantasy or sci-fi.
I get to see everybody.
So that was it for her, at least for now.
Okay. Can you, all right, we'll come back to her because I have a couple of questions. All right. And if you see my head going down, it's not that I'm not paying attention. I'm taking notes on what you all are saying so that we can better, when I speak to my presenters, so we can better direct information to you. Catherine, you go by the name of Katie or Catherine?
Katie's great.
Katie, that's what I thought. Okay, all right, take it away. Take it away, Katie. So glad you joined us.
Thank you so much. Gosh, I don't know. Everybody seems to have a pretty good idea of what they want to do, and I don't know. I do know that I don't fancy fiction, so nonfiction, and I've always fancied the idea of doing observational kind of writing. Like, my dream job would, because I love to talk to people and chat people up and find out who they are, and just find out what's their story, so that would be my dream job, just finding out who they are and what's their story, and composing just some sort of book of different people, and who's the writer that did a thing about different people's occupations, and so something like that, or I don't know.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? You're a realtor, the girl said, right?
I am a realtor. I'm a Jill of all trades. Really, I've done I've had many vocations over my life, and I've lived in many places, including 2 foreign countries. So, I've done a lot of things, and I'd like to put it all together somehow and make it count.
I have in my book, and this is not a plug for my book. This is just something that I can add on to what you're saying. There was somebody who grew up in Egypt, and she grew up in a lot of different places, and the experiences that she had in all those places made for a very interesting story. Then I had somebody else whose parent traveled around, and she started in upstate New York and ended up in Greece and Turkey and just so many different places. And it added, for me, it added to my whole theme of diversity, about the people who come to Las Vegas and how diverse they are. And it sounds like you've had experiences living in different places, which for me, anybody who's read my book, here's the beginning of it, where I spent my first 50 years in Long Island in the same mold as everybody that I knew. I lived in Long Island. I got married. I went to college. I came back. I had 2 children. It taught it was the same thing. So when I came here and people were so different and had so many different experiences, it was something that I marveled at. And that was the genesis of why I wrote the book. So I can really maybe kind of help you with that.
I'd love that. Yeah, that's kind of what I want to do.
Well, thank you for joining. And you found out about us on Facebook, the thing I put on Facebook, or you were Joan's friend, or I didn't understand the connection.
I'm friends with Joan and Sheila
And she was
Klein,
right.
and I saw it on Facebook through that. So I'm delighted.
I was trying to put it together. Okay. My friend Karen and I went to college together many years ago and reconnected just recently. And I was thrilled to catch up with her. And she
Right.
also heard about, the writing I was doing. I was telling her that's what I was doing. Oh, so excited. I'd love to be able to try to do something. So here she is. I'm very thrilled that she signed up all the way from New York. So she
Excellent.
she was able to add 3 hours to the time difference and figure it out.
Right. Yeah. Awesome.
All right, Karen, tell us your story a little bit, please. I can't hear.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay,
Maybe
good.
there's a story there of how we connected and the power of Facebook, although I won't be writing that, but I'm ecstatic to be here because Lynn and I have not seen each other in
50 years.
years, and we made a connection, and I'm proud of the work she's done, and I was thrilled to be part of this. So just really briefly, I grew up in New York. We met at Cortland, New York, where we briefly overlapped at school. I went on to a different school, but we were at each other's weddings, and we found the pictures to show that. So I lived in New Haven, Connecticut for 7 years after I got married, and then I raised my family in Philadelphia. So I have a connection right away to Joy, because Joy, I understand you're from Philadelphia. We'll have to talk about that. But I lived in Philadelphia for 40 years and still do live there, although we split time between New York and Philadelphia. I'm mostly in Manhattan right now, but right now I'm in Denver. So I didn't buy that much time because my kids live in Denver, and we're actually visiting here. Professionally, I was a teacher for a few years, and then I went on to nonprofit work. I became president of my synagogue, which is a large synagogue in Philadelphia. And when I finished that after 4 years, I went on to work for the Union for Reform Judaism, where I was the director of the large congregations in North America, which was a challenging job. Did that till I retired for about 15 years. But the thread in everything I did was always about editing, writing, and speaking, which I did a lot of during my career. I have a son who's a journalist, has published some books, so I've followed his career as well, and I actually did a little editing for him when he let me. But when I retired about 4 years ago, I decided that I wanted, what I missed the most about working was writing. And I really like to write, although I've not done anything formally. But I always have something to say. That you can ask my husband that. But a book to me is overwhelming. Then I thought of doing some blog, maybe just doing a blog that might have been of interest. And when I started thinking in the last 2 weeks of what I want to write, I try to think of what really connect my life, what was important to me in working. And it was creating a community, making a difference in people's lives, and making connections to people, to each other, and people to me. And the other piece of my work has always been, I've loved to hear people's stories, not dissimilar from Lynn, most geographically, which is what really was the impetus for that book. But I'm always interested when someone tells me, I work at X. I always say, how did you get to that work? What was the trajectory? What was the journey? And I don't know if there's a book in there or even if I want to write it, but I do miss the writing. I love the writing. I love the editing. I'm still very active in nonprofit work as a volunteer. So I do a fair amount of writing and some speaking, but maybe that's what I want to do. I don't know. I just sort of feel that maybe stories of people, of how they got where they are in a way that would surprise you, may be something of interest, but I'm open to suggestions. And I want to thank Lynn for letting me know about this course and meeting all of you.
It was Bashert.
Yes.
All right, my friend Star. Star was can't hear you. You have to unmute. Star, you have to unmute. There you
Am
go.
I good? I'm not good with technology.
That's all right.
Okay.
Star and I knew each other many years ago from one of the schools that I was an assistant principal at, and reconnected through Facebook. And I was thrilled that she had something to share and something that she wanted to write, and picked up the thread of taking our class. So Star, tell them a little bit about yourself and about
Okay.
maybe the idea that you have, because I thought it was really very, very touching.
Yeah. Professionally, I was a teacher. I worked with Lynn for 8 years. Left public education to have my son, who's in the background. I'm homeschooling right now, and help my husband own a business. So I've had those hats. Went recently back into a private school, but need to be home for just for our family reasons. And but like all throughout my life, I've always been a writer, like not on purpose. I would remember in high school and college submitting papers. Mine was always the one read to the class, and people have always told me my whole life, you should be a writer. Like I find writing, like even Lynn would probably, like when I did report card comments, I would run out of characters because I just had so much to say. Like I have a lot to say. I just never had a specific thing to write about. And I knew I'm a 1 October survivor. My daughter and my mother both are. So definitely have something to write about. I write a lot to myself at night. It's my therapy. I just have a hard time sharing it. I've shared a couple of things on Facebook, and people have said you definitely need to be a writer. So Lynn just happened to, I don't even know how you were in my feed, honestly. I just found you and you had a writing course, and here I am.
Because we were Facebook friends, that's why.
Yeah, it was just timing.
And I happened to look at Facebook October 1st, and I mean, we connected before that, but I saw what her thoughts were, and she wrote a blog of October 1st, and I couldn't tell whether there were survivors in your family or whether
My mother and my daughter. And
Yeah.
my daughter lost a very good friend, her lab partner.
But I was hoping that it wasn't somebody in your family who you lost, and that was the impetus for you writing. Okay, but that's certainly a story to tell, and one that people who have, thank God, not been in that situation would really like to know from the inside out how that must have fallen, how that must have felt. All right, my friend Judith, who you're going to see on the video. You're going to see her again because she shared the video with me in June. So tell us a little bit about yourself, because there's going to be more that's going to come out of the video. So we don't want to upstage you on the video. So just share a little bit about this new idea that you have, and which is very different from the book that you wrote, which is wonderful.
Oh, okay. Well, at any rate, I'm not up there, so I don't know if anybody can see.
We can all see you, right? We will see.
Because I can't see me. But at any rate, doesn't matter.
Judith?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I just didn't know. All right. I was in the beauty business all my working life, in one respect or another. And I had my own cosmetic company for the past 35 years. And I always knew I wanted to write a book about my work. And it took 5 years, but I did. And it's called Gotcha Covered, the Compact Guide to Camouflage Makeup. And what I did in my work is that I was trained to do makeups, the whole 9 yards, with the eyeshadows, the lipsticks, the contouring, the concealing, all this stuff. And I came to realize that in my life, that wasn't enough for me. I wasn't connecting to people. But I loved when somebody said, "Oh, I look so pretty." But I also didn't like, once I remember that a woman said, "Don't make me look too pretty because I get too depressed when I take it off." And, I started really thinking about, what is the whole idea. And of course, enhancement is and making you feel better. And I loved every minute of it. But what I wanted to do something that was a little bit, what I felt was more important than just lipsticks and eyeshadows. So I began to specialize in corrective cosmetics. And I was from LA, and I started working with quite a few plastic surgeons in that area in Beverly Hills. And I was the one they would call in after somebody had plastic surgery, and I would show them how to conceal and cover up all their post-operative bruising. And then doctors started sending patients to me who were abused women who wouldn't go out of the house because they had bruises all over themselves. And I remember one poor little girl once. She was a African American, and she was very, very, very dark skinned, but she had these huge white blotches all over her face, and that was vitiligo. So I did that sort of thing. And when I came to do the
Excuse me,
book,
Judith,
What?
I'm gonna ask you to speak, because all of this comes out in the tape that I'm gonna watch. Just speak about what your new idea that you shared with me is about. What
I
you're,
thought you said how I started to.
no, well, yes, but
Oh,
that's
okay.
gonna come out in the video that we're gonna present to them. So let's
Oh, good. All right.
with the new.
Well, at any rate, so I retired. Slash forward. I retired. I sold my business. And I always had a fantasy about a particular book that I wanted to write, which was a children's book. And it is a fable. And, writing the beauty book was one thing because it was my life for so many years, and I could do it, with my hands tied behind my back. I'm sorry? Oh, she's okay.
Let somebody answer your phone.
So at any rate, I just have to say I'm stuck. I have a concept. I didn't, it's something I've never done before, starting, an idea of a book or not knowing exactly how to approach it. I have the outline and all this stuff, but there's a lot of dialogue. There's a lot of bantering. It's got to be somewhat humorous and, but kind of nothing that's really far-fetched. It could be so real in our future. It is a futuristic sort of thing.
Okay.
And I believe so much in the concept and the story, but I don't believe in myself at this point in time to be able to write the whole entire book. And I'm trying to get a handle on that, see if I can do it. Collaboration is always, I've always collaborated. I love collaborating with people and bouncing off ideas, and I'm not an inside alone person. So it's been difficult. And at any rate, I just, was curious. Everybody has their own path and what they're good at and what they want to become more accomplished at. And that's my story. And that's where I am. I'm stuck. That's where I am.
Well, that's hopefully that's what this class can open up for you and give you ideas and give you some strategies and things that you wouldn't have thought of yourself.
Absolutely.
I see Judy. I don't see a face, but Judy, are you on this? Neil, do you know whether Judy?
Judy's here, and she just wants to get a sense of what the program is like, so she has
Okay.
a better feel for her session in a couple of weeks. So she's just listening in, I think.
Okay, all right. So this is Judy Palumbaum, who is an educator and an author. She took, very interesting. She took the photographs. Her father was a photographer. She took the photographs and she used those photographs to craft a book about what he did, and there was a lot of civil rights involved in it, and it sounded like a very interesting thing. And she's going to talk about some of the frustrations about promoting books, and I think I'm very interested in that because I've gone through it. So we're looking forward to hearing what she has to say. She's going to be speaking next week on the 11th with 2 other people. And Neil, all these people have gotten the agenda of the sessions and so forth. Okay, so then you all know. Okay, so then you all know. All right, so let's just go to the video. As I said, it's a 26-minute video about how the 4 of us came to write. Some of it you heard from Judith. It's going to be repetitious, so it's just her story. And then we'll come back together afterwards. And if it sparked any interest in you in terms of, well, I didn't really know how to do it, because many of you touched on things that were the ideas of the four of us. So that was kind of interesting to me. So let's just watch the video, relax, enjoy it. It's very, very unprofessional, because we were not writers, we were not actors, actresses. But Neil was very, very gracious about putting it together for us, and it is on YouTube. If you love it, you want to watch it again, you can watch it again. And, all right, so let's do it, Neil. Okay.
And just keep in mind, a lot of times
All
when you
for the stories.
a
What?
lot of times when you share on Zoom a YouTube video, it's not the best quality. So keep that in mind when I do this. So I need you guys to know. Let me start this.
Good afternoon. We are four ladies who came to writing, not as a profession, but because we had something to say. And what we're going to try to let you know today is how you write as somebody who is not really a trained writer, but yet somebody who has something to say. In my particular case, this book that I wrote, 50 States, 50 Stories, I Never Thought I'd Live Here, came out of talking to people after we moved here and listening to people from all different states and different countries who had a story to tell about how they came, but they never expected to be here. And I heard that line over and over again. That was the end of their story. And I said to myself, there has to be something in this in terms of writing a book. So what I did was I had forms that I had them fill out. They agreed to, if I was going to write a book, they agreed to be in the book. And then I just put them in a folder. And I was working at the time. I was an assistant principal in the school district, and I was working, and I had no idea really what I was going to do about it. And the day I retired, I decided that I had all these forms. I had well over 100 forms that were filled in with great information and great stories and different things than what you would think. And I just sat down and I put them in alphabetical order, starting with A, starting with Alaska, and went all the way up to Yugoslavia. And little by little, I wrote the stories, and it became a book. And the whole reason I'm telling you this is because it was not anything that I really ever thought I could do. I never really thought of myself as a writer. I never really thought that I had the expertise. I knew that I knew the English language, and I was, literate. But then I started reading things that I had written to people, unfortunately eulogies or speeches for something, and I kept them in a folder. And I looked at them and I said, they're pretty meaningful, they're pretty emotional and pretty meaningful. And, I thought I could do it. So my advice is, if you have something to say, if you have a story to tell it. And don't worry about the form, and don't worry about the grammar, and don't worry about all the things that get edited out, because that will all come with time. But if you have a story to tell, do it and write it at your own time, your own pace, and just enjoy it, and you'd be surprised at the results. Have fun with it.
Hello there. I'm Sheila Taube, and this is a work of my heart. This book came, it was never supposed to be a novel. It was supposed to be a short picture book for children, but it grew and it wouldn't leave me alone. It was written about my mother, whose name is Ida, and that she was called Nana. And she was a very mystical, magical woman who had healing hands. So I created this character of Nana Ida out of that desire to please her. So I would call her every day and tell her what I've written, and she would laugh and say, I'm a Meshuggah, but it would not leave me in peace. And it grew, and the characters grew, And it's a story of perseverance and courage and evil and darkness and light and love. The story of these three thieves who want to steal this magical woman because when she cried, her tears turned to diamonds. And they go on a quest, and they are measured in every land. They have to go through all 4 lands. So there's a lot of ecological value in this. Each land has its own issues and need for respect and honor, water, land, air. And so that's covered in this book in a way that makes it all it's an adventure story. Most of it came in my dream time. I am an inspirational writer. I am not a writer. A writer sits down and writes. I am not one of those. I wish I was. I wish I had the talent. I've been scribbling poetry and short stories since I wrote my first poem when I was 9 for my father for Father's Day. And I've scribbled all my life because I couldn't make anything with my hands, but I could always write a story. When other children were making cards, I made poetry. And I never thought of it as special because it came easily. I slid into these pieces with great ease and no effort whatsoever, so I never considered myself a writer. But I had a lot to say about morality and conscience and goodness and evil. And I put it all into this story, and I would wake my husband in the middle of the night with names that would come, because I needed names for some of these characters that they would meet in the four corners of the earth. And I would wake him and say, "Oh, I know the name of the captain," and he just thought I was insane. So it's been going on a long time. I write only when I'm inspired. I don't seem to have the talent for words if I have to work for them. So I consider myself a very lazy writer and have written things called Hell is for Lazy Writers. In my writing class, where I met many wonderful writers, including this lovely woman, I always encourage people to publish their stuff. Send it to Reader's Digest. Write it down. Don't worry about whether it's any good, because you're the only one who'll know if it's any good, and someone might tell you otherwise, and it doesn't matter. Only your heart. Write from your heart as well as your mind, your brain. It will be good enough. You don't have to be a professional writer to write anything at all. Look in your journals, look in your calendar, look who you saw last year. Write something down. You can't know where a story is going to find you, and they find you. You don't find them, in my opinion. Whatever excites you, write about it. Whatever makes you sad, write about it. What are your losses? How many family members did you lose? How many are still with you? What do they mean to you? Look around at the more mundane in your life. You will find a story to tell. And I encourage you so much to tell it, even if just for yourself. No one else ever has to see it. But if you want to, send it to a magazine, send it to somebody, send it to anybody. Get published, you never know. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jillian Potashnik, and my lucky number has always been 37, ever since I was 10 years old. And I decided several years ago that I was going to have a bat mitzvah on my 37th birthday, and I did. I started studying at 35, and it was the most wonderful, amazing birthday I have ever had. It will probably never be able to be topped, but that's okay. And then, you know, turn 37, now what? You have a whole year of that lucky age, that lucky number. And so I decided that's when I'm going to write and publish my book. So I did. I started January 1st in Maui on the beach in a notes app on my phone. And 4 months later, I self-published. So 4 months later, I sent it to Balboa Press, and they, edited it and spell checked it and did whatever. And it was available on Amazon about 3 months after that. So all within my magical year that I was 37, it was written, published, and available for purchase, all before I turned 38. So all this time prior, I knew I wanted to do something great on my 37th, or that was my bat mitzvah, but while I was 37, and I didn't exactly know what, but I became a Pilates instructor and then eventually a yoga instructor and kids fitness. And in that career, I kept getting asked the same questions repeatedly over and over again. I'm sure every single person in there, whatever their job or career is, has that question for them that they're constantly being asked. So mine all had to do with food and fitness and friends and family and faith. And it was just a reoccurring thing no matter the age of my clients. And so I was like, you know what? That's what my book's going to be about. And the rest is history.
Hello, my name is Judith August, and I wrote a book about 9 years ago, and it's called Got You Covered, The Ultimate Guide to Camouflage Makeup. And I did consider myself somewhat of an expert since I've been in the business of beauty and fashion my entire working life. And I started out as a model in New York for many years. Then I opened a business, a boutique in New Orleans, a makeover boutique, which was the first one ever in the city. And then worked for other small cosmetic companies along the way. And about 35 years ago, I opened my own company called Judith August Cosmetic Solutions. And that's when I wanted to really put down my experiences when I had my own company. And, you know, things that I've learned over the years that I thought would be helpful to women. And of course, you know, makeup is very helpful to women. I found that it was not only a good marketing tool for my company, but I also wrote it for my grandchildren. My grandchildren live far away. And when they were little, I wanted to, you know, kind of make a chronicle of what Grandma did when she was younger. And so that was a very important goal of mine. And I think that is a very important thing for anyone who considers to start writing, is what, you know, what is your goal? Do you have a reason for what you want to do? Or do you just have a reason to write because of the thoughts that you have? And maybe you think it would be helpful for other people, or just to be something as a part of your family, or even something as a part of your heart for yourself. And to me, this was incorporating everything because it was my life. Essentially, it was my life. And not only that, the women I met along the way, I concentrated in camouflage makeup, which was something that covered and concealed problems that people have. And that was very, very satisfying because it wasn't just another lipstick or an eyeshadow or something like that. They needed help, and I can provide it, and created products to do that. And there's a little bit of a story in here also. So I think that, you know, taking your expertise or taking even a dream would be such a worthwhile thing for anybody to start putting down on paper. It's very, very rewarding, and you never know where it can take you if you want to, or it doesn't have to take you anywhere. It's just something that comes from you, and it's a part of yourself. So, thank you.
So after listening to these three lovely ladies and my contribution, it was very, very obvious that there is a diversity of ideas here. Fairy tale, tale of how people come to live in Las Vegas, a book about cosmetics, a book about physical fitness and faith and friends and family and food. And that's very diverse. But we all had a story to tell. And we all had a story to tell. And it was touched upon that you get ideas in different places. I find that I'm writing a second book now. I'm almost finished with it. And I could be laying in my pool on a float and I get an idea and I can't wait to go out and put it into the computer. Or I'll be on watching a program and there'll be a quote that I like and I quickly write it down and I know I'm gonna fit it someplace in this new book. And I think Sheila touched upon it, that ideas are everywhere and it's positive, it's negative, it's something that happened to us, it's a jump off point, it's just, don't minimize the ideas that you have. And just a story to tell the story. And that's the important thing. And everybody used the word heart, that these stories were from the heart. And that's so. That's so.
I think the common thread in all our books is coming out of a personal passion. I wrote a memoir called Seasons, which was published by Ancestor.com. And it changed my entire perspective. It's all about my family. It's poetry, it's short stories, it's memories, it's memoirs. It changed my life. As I wrote it, it changed my life, having been the youngest. You just can't know the result. If it changed me, you can't know how it might change someone else. This book, pure work of my heart, my passion, and my love for my mother. So I think the common thread here is passion, the thing that caught us up, gave us pleasure. I was a therapist for 40 years. I have so many stories that I cannot tell, but I have a lot of general stories that I can tell. And my passion is writing about women. And I think my next book after this one, because this one is already started, called The Dark Place, it's a continuation of the story. But there's so many stories about women, and I treated primarily women for 30 years and then couples for 10. Women fascinate me. They're so brave and so caring, and the courage of women worldwide is moves me to no end. So I'm hoping that will be my next project. And I still don't consider myself a writer. I consider myself a retired therapist and a great grandma and about to be another great grandma. But writing is still for me so personal. It's like religion. It's so private that for me to put it out there it's an act of courage. And because I'm a woman, I expect myself to be courageous. And all of you have been courageous to put out the things that move you, because it doesn't matter what other people think. And I'm very impressed that you've done what you've done. It's very inspiring to me.
Well, I can't follow that. She's so good.
Yeah.
But you really got a lot of soul in you, and it comes across in here. Yeah, maybe that's what it is. So, but at any rate, I couldn't agree more. In my case, as I said before, that I was in the world of beauty and fashion for so many years, it was almost a logical thing that I would write about what I knew. And so that's what I did, and I told you the reasons why. But after I wrote that book, all of a sudden, a couple of years later, I kind of had another idea. Something happened to me. I won't go into the whole long thing, but I just, I found my best friend, and my best friend was a dog. And I had never let a dog in my heart before, my whole entire life, for various reasons. And I would study this wonderful, wonderful friend of mine, this little gorgeous little creature, and I'd watch everything that she did, and I would make up stories in my head. How did she do this, and how did she get there, and what happened here, and and she couldn't talk to me, so I had to make it up, And
there's your book.
Mm-hmm.
There's your next book.
Well, actually, it is.
That's what it is.
That's what I'm
Good
getting
for
to
you.
the point that I created a story in my mind, And just recently I decided, well, I'm gonna give it a shot. Now, it's a whole different kind of a book. It's something that I never thought that I could do. The beauty book was something that, as I say, knew like the back of my hand. However, this one is different. It's so exciting, and it's you know, it's hard. You know, you want to motivate yourself all the time. You want to get up and write every day, and sometimes you just can't. You know,
That's okay.
I'm done with the ideas. Well, you're not done with the ideas. Tomorrow's another day, and another idea. And as Lynn said, you know, you can, anywhere you go, everything you see,
My
everything you
eyes.
touch, people you meet spark an idea. And you can turn that around and play it so it can fit into what you're trying to say. And at any rate, so it's very exciting. I know it's gonna probably take me 5 years to probably get this book out, but you're right, who cares?
Who cares?
Who cares? Because, you know, time goes by fast, and you just wanna, whenever you have a point to make, just do it, put it down. And after that first couple of years, voila, you might have something published. You never know.
So on that note about where ideas come from. So I'll just give you a little seed of this. The second book has nothing to do with this. The second book is a novel. And on the morning of what would have been my parents' 75th anniversary, my brother woke up and a picture of my parents fell from his dresser. And he called me and he said, you know, this is like weird on the anniversary of mommy and daddy's, you know, what would have been their 75th anniversary. I, on the other hand, had a dream that night about my parents.
I love it.
And that day, June 8th, last year, 2020, I decided there's a story here. What if my parents, this is true, my parents were married 30 years and then they divorced and they never attempted to get back together again. But I decided I wanted to get them back together again in my story. So this is a story. The second book is a story. I made them smarter people. I made them better people. I made them nicer people. And as I'm writing the dialogue, I'm saying to myself, if they only did this, if they only said this, that life would have been so much better. And that's where the idea came from. And to just extrapolate, I have these two chairs in front of my desk where I write, and I had an idea that my parents would be sitting there and they'd be reacting to what I would write, and my dad would say, I would never say that, I would never do that, what's wrong with you? And my mother would say, I can't believe you did this, you wrote a book about us getting back together again. I had no desire to get back together again with him. And that's, you know, it became so real to me that one day I was writing some dialogue, I finished what I was writing, I went to play golf, and as I'm driving home from playing golf, I'm saying, well, maybe I got an email, maybe I got an answer to the question, thinking my parents sent me an email. That's how real it became. And it's just, you know, it's really a kick. Writing is really a kick, especially if you don't see yourself as a writer. That's the best part.
You turn your ideas inside out and upside down,
Exactly.
and they become something else.
Yeah, exactly. Jill, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, you're fine.
I had to say.
I started writing out by writing Yelp reviews, and like literally hundreds of Yelp reviews, enough that I became an elite Yelper. And people would call randomly or text me and be like, hey, I saw your Yelp review, I totally agree, or oh, I'm going to this restaurant because I saw you reviewed it.
Wow.
And it happens all the time, at least once a month. Or someone will be like, oh, I saw that picture of Leo you put on Yelp, I'm gonna check that place out. Like, and I was like, wow, people are really reading what I'm saying enough that like it's affecting where they're going for dinner and where they're sending their kids for camp and like this and that. And it was kind of like, oh, that's cool. Like my opinions, they're not facts, you know, just opinions, are being taken seriously by strangers and friends and people and letting me know. And so that inspired me just to keep writing more Yelp reviews. And then I was like, obviously, like I said earlier, I'm writing my book, and I try not to use a lot of personal client stories. So that's why they're mostly just mine, and the book would have been twice as thick, if not 3 times as thick, if I did really use all my client stories. But it's just inspired by them and how it's all relatable to everyone. So that's what
I
got me
I have a
started.
third book in my mind that the current history is kicking back up for me. I was, in my 20s, I was very involved in the civil rights movement, and I went on the march with Dr. King in Selma, and I know everything was up for, I was brave. I don't think I was brave. I don't think I thought it was dangerous, and it was. And I wrote about it, but I'm seeing the fruit of the tree we planted in the 60s. And I was so young, I was 23, 25, 26, 27, and I don't have the energy for it now, but there is memory of what we did. I was part of a fundraising project in 1965 of the first new construction in Watts after the fires. We built a community mental health center. I raised $15 million. I was a kid. I just didn't know I couldn't do something, as opposed to now when I'm sure I can't do things because I'm tired. But I'm seeing the juxtaposition of what is going on now with Black Lives Matter and immigrants and anti-Semitism on the rise in a very frightening way, having been raised just post-war. I was born in 1940. And so anti-Semitism was very real in my family life. And everybody had family over there, either dying or trying to come to America. And I'm seeing these two worlds coming together in a way that's both frightening and hopeful. And I don't know how to bring them together. I would love other people's input about that, but I can see myself bringing those two experiences together, because my granddaughters march, my great-granddaughter marched. We were marching for women, and she said, "Mommy, why are we marching?" And I said, "Baby, we're marching for you." She said, "Oh, thank you, Grandma." She was just a little girl. And I thought, why am I marching again? Didn't we do it already?
Yeah.
We're doing it again. It's gonna, I don't know if I'll live long enough to do it, but I'm gonna start it. I have these three projects in my mind.
Well, that's the point of this whole thing, that you can write all three
You
projects.
see, the ideas come from everywhere.
Everywhere.
And that's the whole, that's in order to wrap this up for anybody who listens to this. That's the whole point. The title is, So You Think You Can't Write,
You can.
and You Can, and You
And
Can.
you don't have to write
You just
well.
have to have an idea.
Someone
have
else
to
can
have
make
an
it
idea.
great.
Yes.
You know, someone else can edit it, but put it down,
You
don't worry about
can
it.
do it,
Don't.
if you want.
Thank you so much. That was so inspiring and lovely, lovely, gracious women. Appreciate meeting them.
Thank you, Joy. Thank you. I haven't watched it in a while, and I enjoyed it again because I enjoyed the ideas that come out. And I was thinking, as I was listening to Sheila's last part, when she said, "I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to put together the past and the present." I just got this idea. I've read so many, and this is for all of you. I've read so many books that one chapter is in the present, one chapter is in the past, and it's back and forth and back and forth. That could be a definite structure. And she's not here on this now, and it's just a seed of an idea that way of, this was 1963, then the chapter goes to 2019, what was going on in 1963, what she did, what she said, what the causes were, and then back and forth and back and forth. And many books. I actually started for me with a wonderful novel called Sarah's Key. And Sarah's Key was a story about a journalist who gets an assignment to investigate an area in Paris during the war. And it's her story as a child in this area. I don't want to spoil the story for you. It's a wonderful story. And then she's a journalist, and it goes back and forth. And at that time, it was the whole back part about the Holocaust and what happened in Paris was very hard to read. And I remember thinking, I get to the end of a chapter about that and I go, oh God, I hope it's the present. I can't take any more of the past. And then she would go, to the present as a journalist and her backward investigation. And it was like a break. And I thought that was, that was really a good thing. But I've seen over and over again that writers do this. They start in one place and they end up another. It could span 30, 40, 50, 80 years. And it's a back and forth. It's like a yin and a yang kind of thing. So it was just, again, the ideas come, you don't know where they come from, but listening to this, having not heard it in 2 or 3 months, that was the idea.
May I just add one
Please.
addition? Yeah, a personal note. I told you that I wrote and published my memoir a while back. And of course, I have learned so much since then about writing. I have to share with you the fact that when I started to write, I was 80 years old. And when asked what I wanted to do with it, I said, when I grow up, I want to be a writer. And I committed myself at that point, and I've been writing ever since then. And my goodness, I don't know if I have enough bytes on my computer to save everything I've written. Anyhow, just do it is the answer. That's what I'm trying to reinforce. That's all.
So any comments? We have some time. Any comments about what you saw, about what you heard? If I'd like to hear from you again, but what I'd like to do is I'd like to tell you. Well, first I'd like to hear from you, and if we have a little time, I'd like to tell you the books that these people have written, and every one of them is a published author. Many of them self-published. So when we get to the discussion at the very end about how to choose a publisher, don't be daunted by that either, because there are self-publishing companies all over the place that offer a whole menu of services, and you take from it what you can. Anybody have anything to say? Any reaction to the video you saw? Any reaction to did it spark anything in you about giving you a little bit more direction?
Did me.
Who said that? Katie?
Well, I was sitting there watching and just, I guess, an amalgam of everybody. It sparked an idea in me. I actually started it was about 10 years ago. I started a little teeny blog, lasted about a couple of months. And then I lost faith in myself, I guess, and quit. But I'm a poker player. And I just became so fascinated by the stories I would hear at the poker table. People start conversing with each other, and it's strangers, 2 strangers or a couple of strangers at the poker table, and in between hands, they start talking about something. And it would be anything from, I remember one in particular, 2 men, one of them looked over at the other one and said, "Oh, that's a really nice watch you got on there." He's like, "Yeah, my wife bought me that for whatever, occasion." And yeah, I have another one, it was a Rolex or whatever. And I have another one, it's a Philippe Patek or whatever. And yeah, but the trouble with watches is you have to have a place to store them, and you have to do this. And I remember sitting there thinking, what a terrible problem, And it's just, and the other guy was like, yeah, and they were just commiserating over this terrible problem they had over, these expensive watches and what a problem it was having them. And it was just all these different stories I would hear at the poker tables, little sound bites of humanity. And some of them were comical like that. And some of them were sad, and some of them were, or just all these different things. And I kind of sparked on that, and I thought maybe I'll kind of pick that up again, different.
There's your title, Sound Bites of Humanity. There's your title.
Oh, right. Okay.
Hey.
I'm gonna steal that. I'll steal it.
Of course, they would. Well, words.
It was a gift.
But that would be great to have a just a collection of short stories.
Yeah.
Of things that you've overheard, and you know what, you can like you start with a seed of an idea, and then go from there. You're the writer. You can make it end any way you want to. It doesn't, it just, you had the genesis of the watches. Go from there, do something with it. And every story can do that. And you can have sad endings, you can have happy endings, you can have surprise endings. There you have it.
I love it, love it, love it.
Okay. All right. So we have somebody starting already. So anybody else have anything to say? No?
I have something to
Go
add.
ahead, Jake, please.
Well, I just wanted to say that I really enjoyed the last piece on YouTube, and your selection of authors were commendable. And the reason I say that is because we started with yours, which is like personal narratives, people in Las Vegas. Then we went to my favorite, was obviously with Sheila, because I'm connecting with the children's theme. Okay. And I like the part that she mentioned about the different lands and the ecology. Again, that's science-based. I'm thinking, okay, I'm on the right track with my little book idea. And then we went with, I believe it was it Judith or then Jill? I don't remember now. Sorry.
Jill.
The
Jill
sequence.
next.
Jill. And she threw in her little personal, I guess we could say, mission when she turned 37, all the things that she wanted to do. And kudos to Jill for accomplishing all of that. And I like that too, because that's very current with the exercising and the diet and everything like that. And then we ended with Judith, which was very, very well done with the makeup background. And then she was talking about using it for humanity, her skills like that. So kudos to everybody with that, because that was inspiring. Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, Star, please. I was going to ask you if you'd like to speak. Take yourself off mute.
Okay, I had to figure out how to do that.
Good.
Like my case is like, I know exactly what I want to write, how I want to write it, very much like your book, like each story, a chapter. I've renamed my book. The missing piece I had was I don't have to pick past and present. Like a lot of what I write about is in the past, and then a lot of it is like how life has evolved. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes,
So that was like an aha moment. It can be both.
definitely.
Oh.
Definitely. And you can weave them together. I mean, that's what's in, when I, the second book that I wrote, and it's only a manuscript, I was corrected. It's not really a novel yet. I started out with a lot of narrative, and I started out, I told you what the theme was about my parents, and I started out with a lot of narrative, and I was instructed, I was told that was really a very boring way of disseminating facts. So what I did was I lifted a lot of the narrative, a lot of the events, a lot of the background, a lot of the things that I wanted my reader to know, and I put them in a form of a memory. For example, instead of talking about a particular incident, there'd be a present moment where the father would walk into the diner to have lunch with his daughter, and as the father was walking in, the daughter recalled. She recalled the particular memory that I wanted to that I had put in the narrative, which was presented in a boring way, but I put it into a memory. Her dad was always somebody who she saw as a hero. And then I tell a true story about them going into the city when she was a little girl, into New York City. And she was following him down the steps of the subway. And the father got to the subway sooner than the child did, me and my dad, and he ran in, and she was left on the platform. So he separated the doors of the subway and grabbed her and pulled her in. And from that moment on, it was a very heroic thing for a little. She was like 8 years. I mean, I was 8 years old. And so she sees her father walk in, and handsome and striking, and he's always been my hero since that time. And then I relate the story about the thing. So it's a way of, and I'm learning every single day. I have a brother who's a writer who's going to speak the last session, and he's helping me do the developmental part of my manuscript. So I write something, I shoot it out to him, and he always says, he goes, "This is really good, Lynn. You really did a good job, but," there's always a but. And I always wait for the other shoe to fall because it means, I have more work to do. And every time I'll tell you one thing, the simplest thing, if you think this is hard, finding out how to write, the hardest thing is after you write, rewriting and rewriting and reading it again and editing it again. That's the hard part. The easy part is just getting your thoughts out. And that's the best part, just like I said in my video, I wake up early in the morning, something hits me, and I validate that. If something came to me in the middle of the night, a dialogue, a piece of something my mother would have said to my father, I quickly go down and I either jot it down on a piece of paper or I throw it into the computer and I weave it someplace. I mean, if you could see, I have Post-its. I don't know if I can see. I don't know if you can see this here on this here. I have little Post-its of things that come to me. Little lines, like there was a line I heard from something, we all yearn to matter. I just thought that was such a beautiful phrase. We all yearn to matter. So what I did was I put it on a Post-it, and I knew I was going to use it someplace in some time. And when I have a segment of the grandmother relating a story to her grandchildren and and telling them about her life when she came from the old country, and her great-grandchildren are fascinated by the story, that's when I put in, I'm so glad that you enjoyed the story, boys. We all yearn to matter. And it's a way of the grandmother sharing her past with her great-grandchildren in a way that says, remember me, remember my story when I'm not here. And it's things, it's low-hanging fruit. It's things that are there. You just have to find a place for them. And that's the kick of writing. I'll listen to something on television or a great line, and I'll know I'll use it someplace. Anything else? Anything else? I'm sorry I spoke so much, but I have a lot to say. Star, you want to say something?
Oh, I was going to mute because my son's here. But no, I just appreciate, that's my hard part, is having to rewrite a lot about it.
Well, those thoughts come, and then the rewriting just makes it better and better. And my brother always says to me when I say, "Aren't I finished yet?" He says, "Well, you could be, but if you want to make it even better, you have to do X, Y, and Z." And
The prime example of that I've always given everyone is Tolstoy. Was rewritten 14 times, War and Peace. Now, isn't that an example? 14 times. And his wife edited and she rewrote it and he rewrote it. And I once received a little charm as a gift. It showed it was a pen point attached to a keyring kind of thing. And it said, write, edit, rewrite, edit, rewrite, rewrite, rewrite around this little pen point, because it just goes on. The point, when is it finished is hard to determine.
At some point you have to put it to bed. But it's the same thing with any art, whether it's music, whether it's movies, whether it's writing, whether it's any form of art. And we've been watching this series called The Movies That Made Us. I don't know if anybody has seen that on Netflix. It's three seasons. Each one has about 8 different movies, and it's the whole backstory of the movies. And many of these movies took 10, 15 years to make. They were put in a can, and they were literally on the floor, and nobody believed in them. Nobody cared about them except one person, one studio picked them up, grabbed the idea. Many of them had to shop it to different networks. It's just fascinating. And the whole point of why I'm telling you this is because art is art. I mean, it doesn't just fall out of the sky and happen. It's just the idea happens. And then you have to go with the idea. So I as a little, it's not an assignment because I'm not a teacher anymore, but I just wanted to show you, I've learned to use index cards with what I do. So for example, here are my characters. Here are my characters for my book. And what I've done is I've written adjectives for those characters, so that as I write them and as they have a voice, I'm trying to incorporate the qualities that I want to give them. So for example, the character Ben in my book, I have independent, resistant, stubborn, strident. So I keep those, I keep it spread out on my desk, and I keep those words in front of me so that it's a guide about what I want to say. So I'm a big index person, index card person, and I guess that, you know, comes from my teaching. But the reason I'm telling you this is because it's a form of an outline. And what you can do between now and between next week, if you've been inspired at all, what you can do is you can take a half a dozen index cards, and you can write ideas that you have. Just I use different colors. I use like a marker, and then I'll use something underneath it, something to make it stand out, and then something underneath. So if you have a particular idea, any of you who have an idea about a book, you put the idea on an index card, and it could be a small index card, a 3x5, a 4x6, whatever, and then just jot down the ideas in bullet form, not complete sentences. Don't worry about the spelling, just get it down, and then take them. Let's say you have six cards by next week, and you take them and lay them out. I literally laid them out on the floor. And I or a bulletin board, if you tack them on a bulletin board, and look at them and look at what you have, and see where you can go with that. One card can be the characters you want to have. One can be the trajectory of the idea. And these are all broad things. These are all very broad things, and they're certainly not going to be developed on an index card, but they're just thoughts of where you want to go. And as you get an idea for the character, just shove it in there, just put it down. And that could be a good way of starting, as long as you have an idea. And every one of you seems to have an idea. You just don't know where to go with it. But next week you're going to learn about the ideas. It's actually going to be at the end about promoting your idea, but through listening to promotion. Like somebody said to me, I spoke to somebody this morning, a friend of mine from when I lived in Oceanside in New York. We hadn't spoken in a long time. I told her about the second book. She says, I belong to a book club. I'm going to give you a tip. Put questions in the end of your book. What a great idea. I mean, I'm a book club member, and I know how valuable the guide questions are for discussion at the end of a book. So before I send this book to a publisher, I'm going to do that. I'm going to write guide questions, not guide questions, questions for discussion. So ideas come from everywhere. Here, I finished this thing. I never thought to do questions, even though I read questions all the time. There's one person said, make discussion questions. That every book club loves discussion questions, and that's true. Every book club loves discussion questions, and you don't have to think about them. And the person who's facilitating the book talk doesn't have to think about the questions because they're right there. So it's another thing.
Yeah.
Joy.
No, nothing more.
Okay, Judith, did you want to say something?
Yeah, writing isn't for sissies. I think.
Writing and aging isn't for sissies.
Exactly.
That's true. So Karen, you just came back. Did you get to see the video?
Yeah, I did. I just I lost internet connection, and then I couldn't get back in. But I'll watch whatever I missed in the last 15 or 20 minutes on
Okay,
the
good.
recording.
Okay. All right. So we were just jumping off that video and just talking about
Great.
ideas, and we were talking about, I suggested using index cards to write ideas down, and then index cards, and then you can arrange them and flesh them out. The other idea that somebody mentioned about the present and the past, taking a story and talking about the past, and then taking the next chapter was the present, back and forth and back and forth. That's another technique. And we have a title already for Katie's soon-to-be book. We have a title already called, what's the title? Sound Bites of Humanity.
Yep.
She was an observer. She was an observer at poker tables. She's a poker player and got 1 million stories. And I said, all she's got to do is start with an idea of a story, make a collection of short stories, and she can embellish them any way that she wants.
Great title.
There you go. So there you
The
go.
good thing about being a writer is you can lie.
You can do anything you want. That's the best part. Unlike life, I brought my parents back together again who had no interest in God's creation coming back together again. But I brought them back together because I wanted to. And you know what? I have to tell you, it was I know this is going to sound very corny to you. My parents are gone. My mother died a long time ago. It was very, it really connected me to them again. I found it a very just a really interesting experience. And I felt for the time I was writing, I felt very connected to them again. It was really, it really did something for me that I didn't think it would do. And that's the whole art of writing. You don't know where it's going to take you. Anything else, ladies?
Her book is very interesting, by the way. I've had the pleasure of being in the book club with Lynn for many, many, many years. And it's really, it's so gratifying to see the progress of what she's done, and she ain't finished yet, but she's going to get there.
About 2 months ago, I shared the manuscript with my book club, and they volunteered to read it and to give me input. And I got some very interesting ideas. People said some very interesting things that I didn't think about regarding the characters, regarding somebody suggested that I do an epilogue. I started to do that. I didn't really care for the idea, but it was an idea. Somebody else talked about anger. There wasn't enough anger in it. So my comment was, there was enough anger between my parents. I didn't need to write it all over again.
Can someone tell me the difference between a preface and a foreword?
Oh, a preface is just like, a preface and a forward.
Some books have both.
Good question.
I don't know. It's a very good question. I'm going to write it down.
Okay.
I'll look it up.
We'll get back to you on that.
You got me on. I think you can call it what you want. You can call it a forward is something that leads in. A preface is I don't know. I'll come back to you.
Okay.
Write it down right now. Preface.
That's your homework, Lynn.
My homework. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But I started to write, and here's the end. I started to write some acknowledgments, and the acknowledgments could have been an epilogue, but I didn't like the idea of an epilogue. I ended it a certain way. I was very happy with the way I ended it, and I left it kind of up to the reader to to draw their conclusion about what happens. And here's the other thing. My brother is a big advocate of, you have to know the ending while you're writing, because pieces have to drop into the place, almost like pieces of a puzzle have to drop into the place to signal things that are coming. In the case of my book, he said there have to be breaks. There have to be breaks of where they're not getting along, that will move your book in the direction of maybe they don't end up together. And I changed ideas in midstream. I came up with something that I thought was a much more interesting way than just two people who try to reconcile and get back together again. I threw in something. I'm not going to spoil it because maybe it'll get published. It will get published. Maybe you'll read it, but we can talk about that later. But I threw something in that I thought was a more interesting way of shaping the story. And it came to me. What if? And then that was what it was.
What if? That's a great line to end it with.
Yep. What if? Yep. And that's something you can keep in mind. If you're writing something with some kind of a story to it, what if we threw this in? What if we threw that in? And that's the idea of the index cards. Just write it up and come up with the path of where you think you want to go. So next week we are going to have Judy talking about, I spoke about her already. Her father was a sports writer. She wrote a book called All Available Light, The Life and Legacy of Photographer Ted Palumbo. We're also going to have Alan Snell, who's a sports writer, wrote a book called Long Road Back to Las Vegas, and Bicycle Man, Life of Journeys. And we're going to have Carol Patton, who's the author of The Adventures of Mo. It's a series of stories about her dog, about a dog, and she's going to speak about freelancing and marketing. And Judy is going to talk about promotion, and Alan is going to talk, I guess, about sports writing. So we'll divide that up next week. And, you know, if you're motivated to, you know, to do anything in between. Also, let me give you my email address. I mean, I'm far from an expert, This is a real new career for me. But if you have any thoughts or any ideas that you'd like to, you know, throw out, my email is lynn1013@cox.net. And I'd love to hear from you, and you know, even any feedback about today, anything you'd like to, a different direction, or you know, what you liked, what you didn't like. And I have to, again, my dear friend Neil Popish, who I met about 6 months ago, and we've really connected. And I so appreciate the technology part of this, and him going through the motions of getting people together. and doing
Yay,
it.
Neil.
So
Lynn,
thank
time has gone fast. It's been almost a year.
I remember I did my thing in December, but we talked about it from September on. You're absolutely right.
You're right. Mhm.
Good, bad, different time goes. And here it is, 11, looks on my phone, it's 11:32.
It's nice to know you all. It's nice.
Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed it. I love this. And I just looking forward to next week.
Great.
Looking forward to seeing your smiles and your faces and possibly your ideas.
We thank you.
Very,
Thank you. Thanks, Lynn.
Pleasure. My.
very inspiring. I'm proud of you.
Thank you.